Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Hope, Grace, and Faith by Leah Messer, narrated by Leah Messer. To my daughters, Aliana, Aaliyah, and Adeline. When I was lost, you helped me find my way. You are my reason for everything in life. To Lindsay Riley, Larry Musnick, and my MTV family, thank you for supporting me when I needed it most. To all those who have endured childhood abuse of any kind, you're one decision away from a different life, and I believe in you. God grant me courage and hope for every day, faith to guide me along my way, and grace to accept what life gives me to do. Helen Steiner Rice. Prologue. Waking up from a long nightmare. I keep having the same dream over and over. I'm at the bottom of a deep, dark pool of water. I feel a heavy pressure weighing down on my ribs. I need to breathe, but I know instinctively that I can't give in to the urge to gasp for air. Way above me in the distance, I can see a single ray of light piercing through the blackness. I know I need to swim to the light if I want to breathe again, if I want to see my babies again. I kick my legs and pump my arms with all the strength I have in my body. I'm a strong swimmer, but no matter how hard I push against the water, the light above me keeps getting dimmer and farther away. Something, I can't see what, is holding on to me, pulling me down deeper and deeper. I panic and open my mouth to scream for help. I feel my lungs spasm as they fill with water. I realize with terrifying clarity that I'm drowning. I reach out into the darkness, searching for something to grab onto that will keep me from falling into the abyss. There's nothing out there but darkness. I start to realize something is really wrong with me when one of the executive producers tells me that I couldn't keep my eyes open on camera. The crazy thing is, I didn't even know I was that out of it when they were filming. I've been taking a lot of medications, but I'm not a drug addict. After they botched my spinal tap when I was giving birth to my youngest daughter, the hospital discharged me with refill prescriptions for hydrocodone, oxycodone, and Tylenol 3. But what really knocked me out was the diazepam. My doctor prescribed it to calm the free-falling anxiety I experience every time I try to wrap my mind around the stack of medical bills piling up on my kitchen counter. With all the doctor's appointments I've been juggling for Allie, my oldest, I never had time to schedule a follow-up appointment to figure out why I'm still in so much pain. So my dad has been hooking me up with the same medications. Some mornings the spinal headaches are so intense, it's a struggle just to get out of bed. But I have 3 little girls I need to take care of. I keep taking the pills so I can get up, get the twins ready for school, look after my youngest, and face the daily reality of my oldest daughter's diagnosis with a rare form of muscular dystrophy, without completely falling apart. At first, the medications helped dull the pain in my body and my mind, but at some point, they stopped helping. Now I'm starting to think they might be part of the problem. I just want to feel normal, but I'm either in so much physical pain that I can barely stand or so foggy from the pills that I look like a junkie. I tried taking half the dose and then a quarter. My doctor keeps telling me that my body will regulate. I'll adjust to the medication and not feel so groggy. The puncture that's leaking spinal fluid into my body will eventually heal, and the headaches will go away. Deep down, though, I wonder if I'm so broken, there's no medication in the world that can fix me. I don't know how I got to this place. Sometimes I look around and I don't even recognize my life. It feels like one minute I was a 16-year-old cheerleader with dreams of going to college, and then someone pressed fast forward on my life. Now I'm a 22-year-old single mother of 3, sifting through the wreckage of 2 failed marriages and trying to figure out how I fucked up my life so badly. I've made so many mistakes I've lost count. They keep piling up like pebbles in a jar until there's no room left for the person I used to be, or hoped I could become. I've almost forgotten, or maybe I just don't care anymore, that my life is being recorded for a reality television show and edited for maximum drama. The show has been a part of my life for so long now, it's hard to remember what it was like before I had a camera crew following me around, or producers dictating which parts of my life make it on television and which parts end up on the cutting room floor. I don't really have a choice anyway. I agreed to live in this fishbowl. Between the mortgage on our house, Allie's medical bills, and the money I naively kept lending my dad to get him back up on his feet, I need the income. I try to stop taking the medications, but my whole body aches, like I have the flu, and I feel like I'm going to puke. I tell my mom that I don't feel right. I stay at her house for a few days. She and my stepdad, who's an RN, try to help me wean myself off of the medications. They give me Imodium for the diarrhea and Tylenol for the body aches. It helps, but I can't hide out at my mom's forever. I go check on my dad, and as I'm leaving, he presses a couple of pills into my hand. I don't want to take them, but I'm in so much pain, I need to keep it together in front of the cameras. I have to pretend I'm okay. If I slip up, even a little, it could give the twins' dad ammunition he could use to get custody of them. I know that internet trolls and gossip sites are going to have a field day when this season airs, but I feel so depleted that I'm beyond caring what I look like on camera, or how it influences the way other people perceive me. I can already see the headline: Troubled teen mom Leah Messer on drugs as second marriage collapses. As cruel as the media and bloggers have been, the people who judge me the most harshly are the ones in my own hometown, but they have no idea what my life is really like. The humiliation of millions of people judging me for the stupid mistakes I made as a teenager. The heartache of failing at 2 marriages. The mind-splintering spinal headaches ever since my youngest was born. The loneliness of taking care of 3 girls all on my own. The day-to-day reality of raising a child with special needs, whose future is being eclipsed by a condition that I have no control over. They have no idea. When I think about Allie, I just want to know why this is happening to her. She is so sweet and innocent. She deserves to have the same future as her sisters. I want to scream at the world that it isn't fair. I would never wish what Allie has on another child. But why her? Why did she have to be born into a body that won't have the strength to run along the beach, do a cartwheel, or climb a tree? I'm so sad and angry all the time I can barely eat, or sleep, or breathe. I feel like I'm suffocating. When I close my eyes at night, the voice in my head gets stuck in an endless loop. Is it my fault? Is Allie being punished because I'm a bad person? Am I doing enough to get her the help she needs? Do I even deserve to be her mother? Maybe the girls would be better off without me. I don't even remember getting into my car. I just know that I can barely see the road through the tears streaming down my face. I glance back over my shoulder at the 3 crumb-covered car seats behind me. Except for Addie's sippy cup, they're empty. I do a mental check. Allie and Aaliyah are with their dad. Addie is spending the night with Jeremy's mom while he's away working. It's just me in the car. I press my foot down on the gas and watch as the needle on the speedometer goes from 80 to 90 to 110 miles per hour. It's dark, and there's no one else on the road. I've driven down this stretch of Minkshel's Hill 1,000 times. There's a steep cliff off the side of the road just up ahead. It would be so easy to drive my car over the edge. Then it would all be over. No more worries, no more failure, no more pain. Instead, I slow down and pull over to the side of the road. I turn off the engine and put my head down on the steering wheel. A lifetime of tears comes pouring out of the deepest part of my soul. I cry so hard, I wonder if I'll ever be able to stop. Then a thought cuts through the deafening static in my brain. My daughters need me. I take a deep breath and a calming stillness settles over me. It's like I was in the middle of a violent thunderstorm. Then suddenly the clouds parted and now everything is bathed in a warm light. I can see clearly what I have to do. My daughters need me. It would be selfish to abandon them, to leave them with the same void I've been trying to fill my whole life. For better or worse, I'm all they have. I need to be stronger. I need to get the hell out of here and fix myself, so I can be the mother that my daughters deserve. Chapter 1. Daddy's Girl. All my life, all I ever wanted was to feel loved. For a long time, I wasn't capable of searching within myself to find that love. So it became this big, empty void that I was always looking for someone else to fill. When I look back at my life, it's so clear to me that I was repeating the same mistakes my mom made. Searching for love in the wrong places. Getting pregnant at 17. dragging my pain from one relationship into the next, without ever stopping to unpack any of my baggage. I allowed myself to get pulled into that cycle because I desperately wanted to feel loved. And it took hitting rock bottom for me to realize that if I wanted something better for my girls, I had to learn to love myself first. When you grow up in a home that's dysfunctional, you end up attracting dysfunction into your life because it's all you know. I don't remember my mom and dad ever being happy together. They must have loved each other in the beginning, but by the time I was 2 years old, their marriage had become completely toxic. I was 5 when they finally split up for good. And after that, we moved around so much, I never established a stable home environment. My brother Isaac and my sister Victoria were too young to understand what was happening, but I was in kindergarten at the time. I took it really hard. My teacher called my mom to tell her she was worried about me because I had burst into tears as she asked me about the picture I was drawing of me and my dad. What I remember most from the years before my dad spiraled into drug addiction and my mom kicked him out is just feeling so close to him. Wherever he went, I wanted to be right there by his side, like his little shadow. When I close my eyes and think back on that period, I see snapshots of myself curled up in my dad's lap, or him getting down on the floor to play with me, like moments frozen in time. My earliest memories are of him preaching at our church in Queen Shoals, West Virginia. He worked a day job for a government contractor building bridges for the county, but his true calling was as a Baptist preacher. He knew the Bible like the back of his hand, and back then, he was still handsome and full of charm. I remember my mom taking us to watch him preach at an outdoor tent revival in our town one time. I couldn't have been more than 3 or 4 years old, but I have a vivid memory of him coming out onto the makeshift stage, wearing raggedy pants and a shirt that was all torn up. I didn't really understand all the words he was saying in his sermon, but I knew he was dressed that way to make a point. God loves all of his children, no matter what we struggle with or how imperfect we are. I was sitting in the front row next to Victoria, who was barely out of diapers and more interested in fidgeting around in her chair than the wisdom our daddy was preaching on the stage. I turned around in my seat to look back at the crowd of people sitting behind us in rows of metal folding chairs. They were hanging on my dad's every word, praising Jesus and calling out amen. When I turned back around and looked up at my dad, he was smiling down at me. Even dressed in rags, he had a glow about him. He held out his hand, so I hopped off my chair and walked over to him. I can still remember so clearly the feeling of love that washed over me as he pulled me up on stage so I could preach to the congregation right alongside him. That's the last happy memory I have with my dad. According to my mom, he fell in with the wrong crowd, started smoking weed and taking pills. The way my dad tells it, he hurt his back working construction and ended up getting hooked on pain medications. Either way, the end result was the same. He became a junkie who could barely take care of himself, much less his wife and children. I'm not sure my mom has ever gotten over her anger towards him. They met at church when she was 16 and he was 25. She saw him preaching and was totally in awe. Within a year, they were married and I was born. Nobody really thought twice about the age difference or the fact that my mom had a baby at 16. In her family, that was just what you did. Growing up, her mother was more interested in making sure my mom helped her with the housework than how she was doing in school. Going to college or having a career wasn't even a consideration. When you grow up in a really small town like ours, the goal for so many young people, especially for women, is to get married and have kids. You're living on the poverty line and there aren't that many options, so you just follow the family cycle. For my mom, getting married to my dad at 16 was also a way out of her unhappy home life. Her real father left when she was a baby, and her stepdad was a mean drunk who was physically abusive to her and my grandma. They never knew when he was going to snap and become violent. She lost count of how many times their dinner ended up on the floor after he lost his temper and slammed his fist into the table.
or how many nights she cried herself to sleep listening to him and my grandma fighting when he came home late after a night of drinking. It always ended with him throwing my grandma against a wall or shoving her into a dresser. The worst story she ever told us was about the time she was playing outside while her stepdad was working on a gas-powered lawnmower. He told her to go and get him a wrench from the garage. When she brought him the wrong kind of tool, he got angry and threw the container of gasoline he was holding in her face. She wanted out of that life, and when my dad came along, he was this handsome, charismatic, older man who seemed like the answers to her prayers. I think she truly believed that he was going to rescue her, and they would live happily ever after. Instead, she wound up in the same toxic relationship cycle her mother was trapped in. The first time my mom divorced him was before Isaac was born. We were living in a mobile home on my grandma's property, and my mom had enough of my dad getting high, so she kicked him out and filed for custody of my sister and me. Then one day, while my mom was at work, my dad went to my grandma's and told her he was taking me out to buy diapers. I was barely 2 years old, so I have no memory of it. Apparently, instead of going to the store, he took me down to the courthouse, filed a counterclaim against my mom, and got temporary custody of me. There's a part of me that still wants to believe he loved me so much he couldn't bear to be without me. But the truth is, he was playing a game of tug-of-war with my mom. A few weeks later, out of desperation, my mom agreed to remarry him because it was the only way for her to get me back. Maybe there was a part of her that wanted to believe he would change, but of course, he didn't. My dad couldn't hold down a steady job, and she was constantly finding drugs on him. When she found out she was pregnant with his third child, my mom said she just sat on the floor and cried for hours. To make things worse, her doctor told her that the baby would have spina bifida, a birth defect where the spine doesn't form properly, and recommended that she terminate the pregnancy. Even though she didn't want to have another baby with my dad, she told the doctor, "I am not getting rid of my child. God gave me this life, and he is the only one who can take it away." It turned out that the doctor was wrong about Isaac. When he was born, he only weighed 3 pounds. At first, they didn't think he was going to survive. But little by little, he got stronger, and he turned out to be a perfectly healthy baby. Meanwhile, my dad was more interested in getting high than meeting his son. When he finally got it together and brought me to the hospital to see my new baby brother, a bag of weed fell out of his pocket onto the floor right next to my mom's hospital bed. That wasn't even the worst thing he did that week. A few days after my mom and Isaac were released from the hospital, we visited my great-grandmother in Jackson County so she could meet the new baby. As soon as we got there, my mom told my sister and me to go sit in the living room floor and don't move. We sat down on the floor in front of my great-grandma's television while the grown-ups sat on the couch chatting and watching the local news. When they got up to go talk in the kitchen, we knew not to get up and change the channel. If our mom told us to stay put, that's what we did, because we knew if we moved, we were in trouble. We didn't have much room to be children, so we sat quietly as we were told. Then suddenly, my dad was on television. I remember seeing blue lights flashing on the screen, and my dad in handcuffs being put into the back of a police car. "Mommy, Mommy," I called out, "Daddy's on TV with the bad boys." I didn't really understand what he had done, but I knew that it must have been something really bad, because she immediately started gathering up our things to leave. I heard her telling my aunt that she had to go find a bail bondsman because our no-good daddy got himself arrested for soliciting a prostitute. As she was loading us all into her Chevette, she was so blinded by anger that she didn't even see me standing there with my hand in the door. She slammed it so hard that my fingernail ended up turning black and falling off. She told us later that when she went to arrange his bail, the bondsman looked at her in total disbelief and asked, "You're putting up the money to get this guy out of jail, and you're the wife?" She was so humiliated that when she picked him up from jail, she made him kneel down on the floor in the back seat of her car, so no one in town would see her driving him home. As long as he wasn't hurting her children, she felt like it was better if we didn't grow up in a broken home. To this day, he swears the whole thing was a misunderstanding, and the cop who arrested him was lying. But when we got older, my mom took us to the town library to show us the records so we could read the truth for ourselves. According to the police report, he had approached an undercover police officer he thought was a prostitute and told her he only had $10 in his pocket, so all he wanted was a blowjob. A few months after Isaac was born, they split up for good. I remember thinking it was all my fault because they got into a huge fight about me right before my mom kicked him out. I had just started kindergarten, and my mom was working as a janitor at CAMC Memorial Hospital in Charleston. So my dad was supposed to pick me up from the bus stop near my grandma's after school. When I got off the school bus, there was no one there to meet me. So I walked to my grandma's by myself. She wasn't home, but a cousin that was living with her at the time let me in. I was on my way to use the bathroom when I noticed his pocket knife sitting on a hutch in the corner of the dining room. I knew I wasn't supposed to play with knives, but I picked it up anyway and walked back towards the living room where my cousin was watching TV. For some reason, I decided it would be cool to open it behind my back. When I clicked the knife open, it was so sharp I didn't even feel the blade slice into my finger. "Look what I have," I said to my cousin. When I pulled my hand out from behind my back to show him the knife, all I could see was blood. And there was a lot of it. I don't really remember what happened next. But my dad was totally MIA, so apparently my cousin called my mom at work. When he told her I had sliced my finger open, she got in touch with my grandmother, who was working nearby. She rushed home to pick me up and drove me to meet my mom at the emergency room in Charleston. The cut was so deep, I ended up with 8 stitches in my finger and an ugly scar that never faded. My dad finally showed up hours later, just as they were getting ready to discharge me. He started shouting at my mom right in the middle of the ER, demanding to know what the hell was going on. My mom was furious. She said a friend of hers told her that he was seen over on the west side of town buying dope when he should have been home to meet me after school. When she realized that people were staring at us, my mom said, "Gary, now is not the time nor the place. You put my child in danger. That is the last straw. I am done. You need to go home, get your things, and get out. I don't care if you take everything I own. I just want you to get out and don't come back." Then she took us to a hotel for 3 days and didn't go home until she was sure he was gone. As a 5-year-old, all I knew was that I had done something bad and now my daddy was gone. After that, my mom was working all the time, so she was never around anymore either. She had to work 3 jobs just to keep our heads above water. We were always being handed off to a family member or babysitters so she could work an extra shift at Subway or wait tables, on top of her job at the hospital. I was the oldest, so I instinctively stepped into the role of caretaker for my little brother and sister. Then my mom got remarried. All of a sudden, we had this stranger living in our house, acting like he could tell us what to do. She met my stepdad Lee at the hospital, where they were both working as janitors. 3 months later, they were married. I think she grew to love him, but she was never in love with him. She was a 23-year-old single mother of 3 and desperately wanted emotional and financial support. But when this new man stepped into the picture like he was in charge after I had been taking care of my siblings for so long, I became very combative. My attitude was, "I can take care of my brother and sister. You're not going to tell us what to do. We don't even know you." Growing up, it seemed like my mom was angry all the time, and she turned that anger on us. I believe she wanted to be better, but I don't think she even realized how controlling and abusive she was. If we stepped out of line the least little bit, we got a smack across the mouth. If we didn't pick up our room the way she wanted it done, the punishment was to stand in a corner with our arms stretched out, holding one of our stepdad's heavy boots in each hand. We would beg and cry to put the shoes down because our arms hurt so badly. But I remember she would make us stand there until she decided we were done. I think she carried all of that anger because she never dealt with any of her pain. She felt abandoned, physically and emotionally, not only by my dad, but by her own father, who was never really in the picture. All that pain was always simmering just below the surface, and it would boil over and turn to rage whenever we didn't behave the way she wanted. It seemed like any feelings we ever expressed came with a punishment. So as I grew older, I shut down and became very anxious and fearful of everything. After she remarried, we moved from my grandma's and lived in a couple of different rental homes around Boone County where Lee grew up. We didn't see my dad much anymore. I want to believe that he tried at first, but my mom didn't make it easy for him. Whenever we would be upset as kids, wondering why we couldn't see our dad, she would say things like, "I'm here busting my butt off for you guys. Meanwhile, your dad's out there running the streets, doing drugs, and God knows what else." Looking back, I understand why she was so hurt that we wanted him in our lives. Though I wish she had tried harder to be less harsh with us to soften the blow. He would call us once or twice a year, if that, and every time he'd say, "I'm coming down to see you guys next weekend." We always believed him, but it never happened. Victoria and I would sit on the porch waiting for him for hours. But he never showed up, not one time. We didn't really see him again until I was 10 years old. He called out of the blue one day and said he was living down in Mingo County, about 100 miles south, and he wanted us to come and stay with him. My mom didn't want us to have anything to do with our dad, but he still had court-ordered visitation rights, so she didn't have much of a choice. She reluctantly agreed to let us spend the weekend with him, as long as his mom, my grandma Flo, his sister Laura, and her husband Niall agreed to check in on us. I was so excited we might as well have been going on a trip to Disney World. As I packed up my little bag and imagined the fun we were going to have with our daddy, all the hurt and disappointment from the times he never showed over the years just faded away. He swore to my mom he had gotten clean and he was doing better, but of course it was a lie. That weekend was nothing like the happy reunion I had been playing out in my mind. He was living in a rundown trailer just outside of Kermit, a forgotten coal town near the border between West Virginia and Kentucky, which 10 years later would become known as Ground Zero for the opioid epidemic. It was basically just a shack on an isolated stretch of road along Route 52. There was nothing and no one for miles around, except for the massive 18-wheeler coal trucks that came flying past a couple of times an hour. My dad spent most of the first day in the back bedroom with a man in a wheelchair, who I think was his roommate, and some woman we'd never met, while Isaac, Victoria, and I sat on a dirty, beat-up old couch and watched cartoons on a crappy little television. Every so often, random people would stop by, and my dad would come out and talk to them. He looked nothing like the handsome preacher I remembered from when we were little. He'd been in a couple of car wrecks and suffered a stroke a few years earlier, so one side of his face was drooping. His hair was all greasy and he was missing a bunch of his teeth. He had allowed me to bring my little wiener dog, Leo, for the weekend, and we knew he was out of it because he kept calling Leo a cat and made me keep him in the bathtub. The next morning, the woman he had been holing up with in the bedroom went out somewhere. We didn't know if she was his girlfriend, but we didn't like her. She was mean-looking, with stringy bleached yellow hair and acne scars all over her face. After she left, my dad finally came out of the bedroom and said, "If y'all want me to be able to come and pick you up more often, you need to go outside and help me collect as many cans as you can." I mean, what kid doesn't want to spend a Saturday morning picking up trash by the side of the road for their dad? Then Victoria and I went out front and started gathering up all the empty beer and soda cans we could find around the trailer. We put them into a little pile by the fire pit. For a while, he was standing out there, telling us where we should look, but eventually he lost interest. Before he disappeared back inside the trailer, he pointed to the field across the road and told me,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?